Hey guys, welcome back to another episode Up and Running. Thanks for watching. Alright, on today's episode, what do you say we finish up the 71 Chevy truck and get it back to the customer? Thanks for watching. Alright, so what we're going to do today is we're going to convert this truck from being a manual brake truck to a power brake truck. So this is a manual setup right here. The master cylinder is bolted directly to the firewall. And, so we're going to take that off, install a power brake booster, which goes basically right here where the master is now, and then the master will bolt onto the front of it. This thing's going to stick out considerably further than it does now, but we'll get this swapped over. So it's a manual brake vehicle whenever this is bolted right to the firewall, and then we're going to stick that brake booster right in between there. So let's get after it. So here's the components it takes to do it. That is going to go onto the firewall, and then the booster is going to bolt to that. That's the new master cylinder, and then those are just various components that are going to be used to make this happen. So we'll probably have to rebend some of the brake lines to make them fit, but I'm not going to know exactly what we need to do until we start bolting this into place. I'm also going to show you what's up under the dash here. So this rod that you see right here is the rod that pushes the master cylinder. And actually, if you look up right there, that's the back side of the master cylinder right there. And so that's attached to the brake pedal. So that is the part that, physically pushes the master cylinder. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start to remove the master cylinder. I don't care what happens to the fluid right now. This whole thing's going to get swapped over, and we're going to have to bleed the whole system. So there we go. All right, so I pulled the old shaft out of there. It was just bolted to the brake pedal. And so now I'm going to put this one in. Yep. All right, then this I think is going to go there, but it looks like I need some kind of a boot in there. And I've got one. I'll have to figure out exactly how it goes. All right, I determined the boot goes here. So let's shove that back through. Tuck the boot in. Bolt that on the firewall. All right. I gotta figure out that boot thing back there, but let's look at the master now. I'm sure I'll have to determine which rod to put in here. All right, so this is one rod length, and if you look, it goes into that master about that far. So I'm kind of thinking that this rod is too short. So I'm going to stick that one in. Yeah, yeah, I think that rod's going to be too short. So, yeah, that's going to be the right rod. So, all right, let's see what else we need to figure out here. So be sure when you put the booster on that the vacuum port is over toward the engine. You don't want it over here. All right, now the next thing I have to do is transfer all these lines over to the new proportioning valve. This sends one amount of pressure to the front brakes and a different amount of pressure to the rear brakes. It's always less at the rear brakes because when you stop, all the weight on the vehicle shifts forward, so it needs more pressure. The front brakes do like 80% of the stopping, the back, you know, like 20. So I just need to switch all that over. All right, that is basically done. I've got one thing. I ordered a plug to replace that brake line that's hanging out of there. That's the way it was in the old one, just crimped off like that, but I'm going to make it look nice and put a plug in it. But there we go. That part of it's all done. Now I have to go into the cab and hook it up and adjust it inside the cab on the brake pedal. So the linkage is, you know, there can be just a tiny bit of play in it, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch or something, but, you know, otherwise it should be relatively snug. So that's super hard to film down there, so I'm not going to be able to film it. All right, so something else I did on this truck is I put a spare tire carrier in it. I did not film it because, frankly, I didn't know what I was doing. Once again, the instructions were non-existent, and I basically just had to sit there and figure it out. Now, I know you're going to look at this and go, well, that's not completely mounted correctly, and you're 100% right. This bolt goes all the way up to the frame there, so I can't shorten that anymore. And then, you know, this one, to compensate, there's actually no air in the spare, so it's compressing more than normal, and so this one's up a little bit far. The guy who owns this truck is talking about putting bigger tires on it, so I don't want to cut the bolts off and make it, you know, nice and 100% until he figures out what tire he wants on this. But basically it just bolted up through the frame in two spots here, and you know, that's about all there was to it. There's a couple of brackets mounted on that piece, but that's all there was to it. So anyway, another thing off the checklist. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to adjust the emergency brake, and this is where you do it on these. You see this is pretty loose and it's just flopping around in it, so it needs to be tightened up. So this part goes up to the pedal up inside the truck, and when you step on the pedal it pulls on this and it tightens that cable up all the way down the truck. So that's what I'm going to do, is go ahead and tighten that up. Alright, so I've gotten that tightened up. You can see there's a lot more of the stud or nut, the rod sticking out. It seems like it's, you know, much more snug right now. You don't want to crank these like over tight so they have the emergency brake, you know, applied all the time. But just so there's, you know, there's a little, just tiny bit of tension on them. So the customer wants to see what this looks like with that rally wheel on, so we're going to throw one on. Alright, so here it is on the truck. I like the look of it. The customer wants to see like how it fills out the wheel well. He's trying to figure out what wheel to use and what size tire and things like that. But I think that'll look pretty good. Alright, so I got one of these sucking machines to suck the fluid out of the rear end. So there's a plug right there. We just pop that plug out and then stick the hose in and suck it out. Starting to run out. Alright, so the customer decided they wanted to go with rally wheels on this truck. So here's the wheels. These are actually used wheels. They've just been sandblasted. They look amazing. It's crazy how well they cleaned up. So these are good original rally wheels. So we're going to get these primed and painted. I think he's going to go with the blue color, the color of the truck. So they should look pretty sharp. All right, so we're going to go ahead and paint these.
Surprised, I thought I'd get more sand out of them. I'm like,
yeah. So Ed's gonna go ahead and paint those wheels for the truck, so we're getting the primer all mixed up, and then we'll paint the blue. Alright, so this truck developed an issue where it would sometimes start, sometimes not start. Sometimes the headlights would come on, sometimes they wouldn't. And I was taking a look at this little fuse block over here. Looks all fairly tidy now, but I had this that I cut out of the wire, and I put a new connector in it. And then this little terminal only had like one wire hanging on it. And we actually had two issues. Sometimes the headlights wouldn't come on, and by me repairing those, the headlight issue was fixed. Also, we would have had a charging issue because one of those was for charging. But let me show you what the ignition part of it was. This came under the dash. Hopefully my light comes on here. Okay, so I was looking at the back side of the ignition switch, and so that is right here. So I unplugged that, and I found they're marked inside the switch. So I just took a mirror and I found battery, ignition, and solenoid markings. So if you connect those 3 items, the truck should start and run. Now you'll want to pull the solenoid out to so the starter doesn't stay engaged once it starts. But so I continuity checked the switch, and the switch was good. It was working properly every time, but I was not getting, when I connect those 3 in the actual plug, nothing was happening. So get down here. So I followed the purple wire around to the top purple wire right there, and it was pulled out of the plug in the neutral safety switch. So that was the problem. So I just plugged that back in, and then the truck starts just fine now. So it must have been just barely hanging there, and so sometimes it would start, sometimes it wouldn't. Now I'll show you here. It was basically right up on top of the steering column right here. I found the purple wire. Whoop. It's hard to get under here, right here. You know, just kept following things around. So sometimes that's what you got to do to figure these little problems out. I know there's a millions of ways to do these things, but this wire right here I made to try to start the truck. So I put that on the battery, that one on the solenoid, and that one on the ignition. And if you touch those 3 to those terminals, the truck should crank and run. Now again, you'll want to pull the one that's on the solenoid back off, so you don't just keep the starter engaged, but that's how you can make a temporary ignition switch. So the owner of this truck went ahead and put some different wheels and tires on it. They look pretty nice. They went with Chevy rally wheels. They don't have the chrome lug nuts on them yet, but they're got them ordered. So that looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to take old Blue around the circle and just kind of give it a little bit of a test drive just to make sure everything is working okay. Comfy cozy. Lit right up. Right in the gear. It shift into second. I think that was third. I'm gonna make sure the brakes work. Stops nice and straight. Beautiful. One more time. Needs an alignment. Beautiful. Yeah, it shifted into third for sure. Take it around one more time. Feel them power brakes. Speedometer works, although I don't think it reads right. I think it reads faster than what we're going. The turn signals cancel. Seems to run pretty good. And we made it. No walking. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode Up and Running. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to come back next time, and who knows what we'll work on. Thanks for watching. Oh, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, ring the bell right next to it for the notifications, and click the like button. I was trying to avoid just that. Alright, now we gotta find that nut. Alright, so on these older vehicles, the emergency brake, we're gonna adjust the emergency brake.